Medical marijuana could soon be legal in New York. Supporters of Governor Andrew Cuomo say he will take executive action and allow select hospitals to dispense it to some patients. Rosa Flores is in New York. So, Rosa, the governor seems to be changing his tune a bit.
He definitely is, Fred, and advocates are pleasantly surprised because they tell us that tens of thousands of New York patients will be able to benefit from this. New York will join 20 other states and the District of Columbia that now allow medical marijuana use for medical purposes, of course. Now, take a look at the Northeast. It's already legal in most states surrounding New York. Now, this is a bold move by the governor of New York. Through an executive order, he would allow the use of medical marijuana in a state where the Senate has already on multiple occasions killed comprehensive bills. So here's how it all would work. Under the measure, the Department of Health would create guidelines. 20 hospitals in the state would administer the drug, and a panel of hospital doctors would determine who qualifies for this prescription. Now, while this creates a lot of questions like where is this marijuana going to come from, advocates say it's a great first step, one some New Yorkers have been waiting for a very long time.
There's Nancy out in Albany, who's a cancer survivor, who used marijuana when she was recovering from or dealing with the cancer treatments. There's people all over our state for whom this is literally a life and death issue.
Now, critics are not happy about this. Jeffrey Reynolds from the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence says the following, and I'm going to quote here, "The prospect of policy changes that could potentially fuel further drug misuse, diversion, and addiction is quite frankly truly frightening to us," end quote. So when could we see the first prescription? Fred, I've got to tell you, some optimistic advocates say in 3 to 4 months.
Wow. Okay, right around the corner. Okay, and in the meantime, what is the governor saying about all this? You have a lot of his advocates who are speaking kind of on his behalf, but what about him?
You know, he's not saying much about this at the moment. He's expected to make the big announcement on Wednesday during his State of the State address. But like you said, his advocates are coming forward and saying this is a great first step because it will allow the ball to start rolling in the state of New York so that all of the infrastructure for this can be ready to go when the legislature comes back, and hopefully they're keeping their fingers crossed, they will have a comprehensive bill that would clear all the kinks, as they call them, when it comes to marijuana use for medical purposes.
Okay,
Fred.
Rosa Flores, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so are the political dominoes starting to fall in the politics of pot? Rick Tyler is a former spokesman for Newt Gingrich and now is senior vice president at the Strategy Group Company. Good to see you. And Julian Epstein is a Democratic strategist and former chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee. Good to see you as well. Happy New Year to both of you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Freddie.
Okay, so did Colorado's new law have an impact on New York Governor Cuomo's decision to ease restrictions? Julian.
Well, I think there's a national move, at least towards some liberalization on marijuana laws, and Colorado certainly had an impact in the public debate. I think opponents of it certainly have an argument in terms of the science not being in with respect to motor issues and cognitive issues. But in New York, the real issue is the medical use of marijuana. And I think there, as your own Sanjay Gupta wrote in a blog recently, the science really is in. We really do know that medical marijuana, properly prescribed, can have enormous benefits for people suffering from cancer, palliative benefits. We know that it can have medicinal or positive health benefits for people that suffer from things like brain seizures and other kinds of problems. So I think the medicine is really in there. 75% of doctors really support the medical use of marijuana. And in New York, 82% of the public supports it. So I think the politics are good, and I think the science is right and the public policy is right.
So, Rick, how do you see this influencing the debate about the real merits behind medicinal marijuana when more governors, you know, throw their support toward it?
Look, if we were talking about tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC, that's a drug that's found in marijuana. If we were talking about that as a drug, I don't think we'd be talking about very much. I mean, I agree. It has benefits to certain people suffering. It helps people with chemotherapy. It helps people with AIDS. And I think there's certainly a way that you can dispense with that. But this argument turns into something quite different. Remember, Colorado already had legal marijuana. The ballot initiative that just put it on the Constitution actually brought it under government regulation. So now they're going to attempt to regulate it like alcohol. We'll see if that works or not. California's a different way. I think here in New York, the question is whether Cuomo's putting this out for let me be cynical for a second, political purposes, because surrounding states, including Governor Chris Christie's had it. De Blasio, the new mayor of New York, seems to be getting all the headlines. So what is the real purpose of Mario Cuomo coming up with medical marijuana? And I suspect it's because he doesn't want to talk about the economy.
Well, God forbid a governor do something when you have 82% of the public that supports it and most of the medical community that supports it. Again, I think we're talking about a limited use of marijuana here. The medical use, which is widely acknowledged to have beneficial effects, there is a fair debate that goes on about legalization. So I think I'd leave it there.
Well, do you wonder whether this would be the testing ground for whether New York would want to take it further, like Colorado did, and go from medicinal use to recreational use? Rick?
No, well, go ahead, Rick.
The way I look at it is, look, we have a great federalist system underway. I don't think New York should rush off and try recreational marijuana. Why? Because we have the great benefit now of looking at Colorado. We don't know if Colorado will work or not, but let them experiment. Let's see if it works in Colorado. I have a suspicion it'll cause more harm than good, but I may be wrong. And if it works fine there, other states can try it. So in that sense, you know, let it go. But don't rush off and do it. Wait for Colorado.
Okay, let's talk about politics of another kind. Let's talk about Charlie Crist. He's running for governor again in Florida. He was a Republican, then an independent, and now he's Democrat. So how many times can you change your party and still be considered credible, Julian?
Well, going back to Teddy Roosevelt in 1912, you've seen lots of political figures change parties, and many of them have survived. A number of people are in Congress, Senator Webb, Shelby from Alabama, lots and lots of examples of people switching political parties and surviving. I think Charlie Crist's message is that he didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left him, and I think he's well positioned to campaign against the extreme rightward shift of the Republican Party in recent years. And if you look at the polls, he's been ahead in most of the polls. He's ahead in the latest poll by about 4 or 5 points. His name recognition is very, very high. His favorability in Florida is very, very high. And he's traditionally taken positions that appeal very strongly to not just Democrats, but independents. If you look at the position he's taken on voting rights, on consumer issues, in 2008, keeping the polls open during the presidential election when there were voting irregularities. I think not only does he have those benefits, but I think he'll also get the Obama political machine going into the gubernatorial race. So I think he's the favorite right now.
Okay, Rick, how do you respond to all that? Party left him. He still has leverage and perhaps even has support. Maybe he'd have support from the White House.
Well, first of all, Teddy Roosevelt left the Republican Party to join the Bull Moose Party, and that was not a successful effort, nor will Charlie Crist's effort be successful. He left the Republican Party. Remember, he was on the ballot as a Republican who ran against Tea Party candidate Marco Rubio. He was beaten, so he drops out and runs as an independent. And then in the very same year, he rushes off to Charlotte, North Carolina, and endorses the president of the opposite party, Barack Obama. I find that fairly strange. I mean, it is amazing if he is successful that, you know, someone who can make a political career out of an identity crisis will be rather remarkable. But I think Charlie Crist's days are over. I don't think anybody in Florida takes him seriously. He recently has now changed his position on gay marriage, which actually says more about the Democratic Party, because you have to be doctrinal. You got to believe what the Democrats believe and everything they believe, because it seems to me fairly likely that a gubernatorial candidate who believes in traditional marriage would get elected in Florida, but not if you're a Democrat, because they don't allow that sort of thing. So they have Charlie Crist because he's got name ID and they've got no one better. That's all there is to it.
Well, Rick is correct with respect to Teddy Roosevelt. He did change to the Bull Moose Party, and he did lose after that. My point was that many politicians have changed parties and have succeeded. But with respect to the point on same-sex marriage, which is, I suspect, going to be a Republican charge on flip-flopping on that issue, I think Republican voters, I think all voters give candidates a mulligan when they believe that a position evolves on conscience. And in Florida, again, same-sex marriage is supported somewhere between 55 and 75% of the public. So if the Republicans want to go and campaign on the issue of same-sex marriage in Florida, I think they're climbing up a steep hill.
All right, we'll leave it there.
Look, the ballot initiative was 62%. It passed overwhelmingly, and Charlie supported it.
Rick Tyler.
Well, look at the polls today. It's a different day today than when the ballot initiative
And Julian
occurred.
Epstein.
Very
Thanks so much, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Freddie.
Happy New Year to both of you.